midterms, Russia, China, the future of his defense secretary, and the crisis with Saudi Arabia, even as congressional leaders promise tough action on the apparent brutal murder of a journalist inside the Saudi embassy in Turkey. Evening, everyone. Welcome to The Next Revolution. I'm Steve Hilton, and this is the home of positive populism. In a moment, we'll discuss all that breaking news from the president with Jason Chaffetz, who's standing by for us live. Plus, as President Trump's substantive accomplishments pile up, his enemies in the media still sneer and belittle the big changes and real results that are being achieved. Here with me for all that and much more are Tommy Lahren, Teslin Figaro, and Rehan Salam. But first, let's get to tonight's breaking news, President Trump's interview on 60 Minutes. The president offered a fierce defense of his administration's policies on North Korea, Russia, trade, and more, in a sometimes contentious sit-down. Take a look what happened when Leslie Stahl pressed the president on Russian meddling in the 2016 election.
Do you believe that the Russians interfered in the 2016 campaign election?
Well, they meddled, but I think China meddled too.
But
and
why
I think
do you
other
say
countries,
China meddled
and you want
too?
to know something?
Why do you say China? Why don't you just say the Russians meddled?
Because I think China meddled also. And I think, frankly, China
is
a
amazing.
Bigger problem.
You're diverting the whole Russian thing.
I'm not doing anything. I'm
are.
saying Russia, but I'm also saying China.
China. I love it when he says China. Among other things, the president said he has no plans to shut down the Mueller investigation and also vowed severe punishment for Saudi Arabia if it's proven they murdered journalist Jamal Khashoggi. Just as Senator Marco Rubio was out today with a strong message for the Saudis.
It needs to be thought through carefully but it needs to be strong. It needs to be reciprocal, and meaning it needs to actually live up to the level of the outrage and the criminality if in fact this is proven to be true. I'm glad the president didn't tie his hands in terms of exactly what we're going to do, but it needs to be very strong and meaningful. It can't be symbolic.
All right, let's break all that down with Fox News contributor, former Utah Congressman Jason Chaffetz. Jason, there's so much in there. I wanted to quickly start on the Saudi situation. It seems to me that there's a very obvious narrative being put forward here. I was watching it all day on the media and elsewhere, which is that they're trying to make out that President Trump is somehow being soft on Saudi Arabia because there are financial ties and they've got these compromise. I heard that word being used. And they're trying to treat it like Russia. Whereas, in fact, he's been incredibly clear. He literally said there will be severe punishment if it turns out that this happened. I just think it's Russia all over again.
No, I think the Democrats have jumped onto this without knowing about all of the intelligence. I think the president has struck the right tone. I think Marco Rubio is right. It has to be measured. It has to be calculated. It needs to be precise. It can't be symbolic. It shouldn't be an overreach. This is a very serious situation. But we also are friends with the Saudis. But nevertheless, this type of behavior is abhorrent, should not be stood for, and there needs to be a United States response. But the president is taking us down that right path.
That's exactly right. I mean, he said that right from the word go. That this just is really outrageous, and yet they're desperate for him to appear as if he's being soft on some rogue regime. I just wanted to switch to the other element of the interview that I thought was interesting, the General Mattis aspect, where he basically said, we didn't have the clip there, but I think some of our audience have seen it in the last couple of days, which was that, he's basically General Mattis might stay, he might go. He's basically a Democrat. He was kind of, very positive about him, but open to the idea that he might be leaving his cabinet. What do you make of that?
General Mattis is well revered on both sides of the aisle. I think that's why he was overwhelmingly confirmed. I think he has done a great service for the United States of America. It'd be sad to see him go. But, you serve a few years in that position and then you move on. But at the same time, I think he's been strong. I think he's been a good leader, and I think it's helped us in North Korea. It's helped us with Iran. It's helped us around the world. And it's certainly helped with the funding that Congress upped by tens of billions of dollars to get our military back in strength after being decimated by the Obama administration.
And then you saw the president there getting very fired up about the way he was being pressed on Russian meddling and making the point that China has been as well. It's just so interesting, isn't it, that storyline of Russian meddling, they just literally can't let it go, even though There's no evidence of that at all. I mean, it's just striking. It's almost the only thing that his critics in the media and elsewhere can talk about.
There's no way that Leslie Stahl would have treated President Obama that way. She would have let him answer the question. Anybody who's serious about understanding what's going on in the cyber world understands that China is a much bigger threat. Now, no doubt about it, Russia is a threat. They did try to meddle, but the Chinese, Donald Trump is right about this. And anybody who's serious about understanding cybersecurity understands that China also has a big role in this. The president was absolutely right, and I thought Leslie Stahl overstepped her bounds by continuing to interrupt the president.
I totally agree with you about that, especially on the China front. One of the greatest moves, I think, from this administration is the way they've reversed decades of the failed China policy and got incredibly tough. And set out in Mike Pence's speech the other week. It's a really big accomplishment. One last question for you before we have to go. Just with your political hat on, really, and give us a kind of look forward to those crucial midterms in a few weeks' time. Where do you think it all stands right now?
I think enthusiasm is the biggest factor in the last 3-4 weeks of an election. I think the mob rule that you see happening from the Democrats turns off the independents and the centrists who will determine the election in many of these cases. I think Republicans are ginned up after they saw the way Judge Kavanaugh was treated. And I think Republicans have that energy, and the Democrats are repelling most people, saying, I don't want to be like that, when they watch the TV and see this mob rule that the Democrats are encouraging, participating in, and executing at this very moment.
I think that's exactly right. Repelling is exactly the word. We've got a bit more on that later in the show, but Jason Chaffetz, for now, thank you so much. Great to see you.
Thanks, Steve.
All right, there's so much going on and so much being achieved by this administration on the economy, on trade, on foreign policy, as we were just saying, not to mention 2 Supreme Court justices. We're seeing a dramatic and substantive reordering of the old regime, and in many cases a complete reversal of the old failed elitist policy agenda. And yet, President Trump's critics cannot bear to give him any credit at all. Just check this out from this morning's Meet the Press. This is veteran NBC reporter Andrea Mitchell, who hosts a show over there called Andrea Mitchell Reports.
This is a man who is really enjoying being president, and you can see it.
Well,
and
he's enjoying being the president that he's created.
That he has created. It doesn't mean doing briefings, reading, or doing hard things.
Nothing hard. Not so much Andrea Mitchell reports as Andrea Mitchell retorts. All right, let's bring in tonight's guest. With me now, executive editor of National Review, Rehan Salam, author of Melting Pot or Civil War, A Son of Immigrants Makes the Case Against Open Borders. Former Bernie Sanders national staffer Tezlyn Figaro, and Fox News contributor Tomi Lahren. That, to me, the reason I wanted to put that clip of Andrea Mitchell in there, Tommy, was, to me, it captured something so profound about the establishment and their view of President Trump. They literally just care about the style. Does he read the briefings? Does he do... Not the actual substantive accomplishments.
They don't like that his style is different from their own, and guess what? His style gets things done. So we've talked about this so many times. You might not like his style, you might not like his tweets, but you can't argue with the results, and they hate the results because it makes them look really bad in the media. It makes things really difficult for their darling Democrats in November. But as Trump supporters, we love his style. We love to see things getting done.
Rehan, we're both kind of policy wonks in a way. I really care about that. And if you just look at the substance of what's going on, you may not agree with it, but this administration is doing something. She talked about things there that he's not doing anything hard. Actually, reversing decades-old policy, turning the ship of state around and pointing it in a new direction, especially as he's doing on trade and China. That is hard. If you've worked inside government, anyone can tell you achieving those big changes is difficult.
The truth is that I have mixed feelings for this reason. When you consider the Democrats and their incredible extremism, I believe that President Trump could actually accomplish far more. If the president were more in tune with his advisors, if he had senior staffers who were more committed to a positive populist agenda, rather than people who are not, in fact, committed to that agenda, people who question his economic nationalism, then I believe this administration would be far more effective. President Trump has virtues, but he also has a problem of inconstancy. He's not always consistent in advancing his economic populism, and I do think that that's a liability.
But Tessin, one of the things I think he's been really consistent about, to be fair, is trade. And that's where there's that complete alignment with the populists on the left, with the Bernie Sanders, and he really is delivering that. And I agree with you, Rehan, that he didn't, at the beginning, he had people like Gary Cohn, globalists, who didn't agree with him on that. But now it feels like the team in the White House really is behind the president's trade agenda, and you're seeing these deals, NAFTA renegotiated, just as people on the left wanted. This is real progress.
Well, what I also see is not only are they behind it, I think President Trump has made it clear either you get in line or step aside. You either get behind this policy or you simply leave the White House. You know, whether I agree with everything President Trump has done or not, the point that we all have to agree with, he's been consistently pushing his agenda. He's been consistently moving people that have been on his side and consistently putting people out the White House who don't agree. Clearly, this is our president, will be, you know, for the next couple of years. We either figure out a way, Democrats either figure out a way on how they're going to take over, which clearly they're failing at doing that. We can see all this week talking about Kanye instead of midterms. And so either that or Republicans will continue to win. I mean, it's really just that plain and simple.
But I just want, I mean, look, if it's so shambolic and chaotic and he doesn't read the briefing, he doesn't know what he's, you know, basically they present him as some kind of dummy that doesn't know what he's doing. How come these results are being achieved? I mean, objectively, look at the economy. That's not an accident. You can't say that's all to do with Obama.
Well, perception is reality, and the mainstream media is trying to construct their own perception and make that the reality. So they think that if they make him look like some kind of a bumbling idiot, that somehow the American people will think that. And you know, the funniest thing is this is the man that they think is so idiotic, so moronic, he doesn't know anything, he's an idiot, but yet they think that he coordinated the campaign and the election with the Russians, and somehow he was able to pull that one off, but the man's such an idiot. Okay, pick a narrative and stick with it. The mainstream media is a giant mess.
And I want to pick up that word idiot because it reminds me of one of my favorite expressions, you know, from Nassim Taleb, intellectual yet idiot. We've talked about this on the show before. It seems to me a lot of this Washington, D.C. criticism from people like Andrea Mitchell and others, these are intellectual yet idiot. They have all this knowledge, but they can't focus on the big things. It seems to me that's what the president is doing.
Well, Steve, I'll push back slightly here. At the beginning of his administration, Donald Trump wanted to invest hundreds of billions of dollars in infrastructure, and Gary Cohn said, no, you can't do that, you need to get Wall Street involved. And that didn't happen. Had that been the way he started his administration, he would have overwhelming support. His tax bill. Okay, so he signed this into law, and it's done some good here and there, but Republicans are not campaigning on it. Why is that? Because there wasn't enough in that legislation for working class families.
I don't think that's right.
Either way, no matter what he would have done.
Okay, I want to just very quickly put the bit of this that is missed is the role of both the tax bill and the deregulation in business confidence and in persuading business leaders to invest. That's what's been going on. And in infrastructure, there's new data this week, a big boost in infrastructure investment by the private sector. I'm sorry, we've got to go. And because we have a special announcement for you, we'll be doing a countdown to the midterm election show on Sunday, November the 4th in New York, and you could be part of it. Come and join.
You cannot be civil. You cannot be civil. You cannot be civil. You cannot be civil.
No, you cannot. Yes, this week, there was a new twist in the elitist Democrats' hate-filled campaign to divide America. Mrs. Clinton said it was okay. It's okay because, you know, Republicans are obviously not just wrong, they're evil. So go ahead, she said. Keep going with the rage and the hate. Keep going with this. And also this. Keep going with statements like this from a senior Google executive. Quote, "You are finished, GOP. You polished the final nail for your own coffins. F you all to hell. I hope the last images burned into your slimy, evil, treasonous retinas are millions of women laughing and clapping and celebrate." I can't finish that. Keep going, she said, with campaign ads like this one, encouraging young people to vote.
Tax cuts for the rich? Hell yeah, I'm rich and...
Climate change? That's a you problem. I'll be dead soon.
It's just so offensive. And it wasn't just Mrs. Clinton egging on the hate-filled mob. Other establishment Democrats are piling on too.
Michelle says that, when they go low, we go high. No. They go low, we kick them. We kick
them. And now, with unbelievable cynicism, they're blaming the anger and hate on President Trump and his supporters. Take a look at this spectacular piece of blame shifting over on MSNBC.
Now, the President of the United States is holding rallies where angry mobs of people are demanding to lock up a United States senator because they disagree with her politics.
But hang on a second, there is a massive difference here. Trump supporters are angry with politicians like Hillary Clinton and Dianne Feinstein, and they're right to be angry after the way they've behaved. With the Democrats, it's the politicians who are angry with the people. Good old Mrs. Clinton started it, of course.
To just be grossly generalistic, you could put half of Trump supporters into what I call the basket of deplorables. Right? The racist, sexist, homophobic, xenophobic, Islamophobic.
Grossly is the word. And now a whole new generation of Democrats is getting in on the hating game.
You are either complicit in the evil, you are either contributing to the wrong, or you are fighting against it.
Complicit in the evil? Who talks like this? As well as some old-timers, of course. They're getting in on it too. They can't bear to be left out.
They, not you, have an ally in the White House. This time they have an ally. They're a small percentage of the American people, virulent people. Some of them the dregs of society.
The dregs of society. That is what they think of you. These elitist Democrats want to be president of the United States of America. Well, here is a hint. You will never, ever become president if you hate the country you want to lead. Tell me what you think of that at Steve Hilton X and at NextRevFNC. Let's talk about it too. Tessin, I don't see actually Bernie Sanders talking like this. I don't see the populists behaving like this. This feels like there's a sort of gang of identity politics, establishment Democrats who are just ginning up all this hate. And it's just so destructive.
Well, it's what has always happened. I left the Democrat Party in 2012 to become an independent for this reason, because of the hypocrisy. Democrats, and especially elitists, have always played this game. They've just always thrown the rock and hide their hand. It's no different than what it was before. They can be just as hateful, just as bigot, just as racist, just as mean, just as spiteful, just as low as any good American Republican. It's the issue now is now they're being exposed for what it is. Trump is making people come out and actually have to fight. So now they're trying to switch their narrative to say, oh yeah, we're all about this fight and we're tough. When one minute you say go low and let's go high, now you're saying let's kick them. Which one is it? There was an open letter just last week, once again, to the Democrat Party saying that there's no message, that there's no leader, that there's no consistency. So I don't know if Bernie Sanders is speaking like this as well in the public, but I wouldn't be surprised if he didn't say it in private. So now we're having to actually deal with politics. Okay. I mean, yeah, because they all say one thing on stage and then do another. I did a poem about it in 2014. This is nothing new. I've been behind the scenes in the kitchen, and I've been seeing what the cooks have been doing for quite a while, and that's why I left the party myself.
So I thought Peggy Noonan had a really interesting piece on it, and she was back after a break in the Wall Street Journal, and she said it's actually a bit like what Jason Chaffetz was saying earlier, that people in the middle, regular Americans, look at this stuff, the events and the reaction and the language and the stuff we've seen on the screens over the last few weeks, and they just think, her word was, this is demonic. This is so repellent. That was Jason Chaffetz's phrase. It is, isn't it?
This could be the great squandering of an opportunity. If you saw many of these special elections for the House, you saw Republicans winning barely, but actually Democrats doing decently in red states. But by pouring this bile, by seeming to actively detest Americans, who are conservatives, who are moderates, what you're doing is you're actually turning this into a recapitulation of 2016. There are 23 districts that have Republican representatives, but that were won by Hillary Clinton. They might win those seats. But the problem is there were many other seats they might have been able to win that they're now likely to lose, and the Senate is falling out of their grasp because there are too many parts of the country where this hatred just doesn't play very well.
I mean, they've learned nothing from 2016 in the
They've learned absolutely nothing, and you talked about, oh, they think that this is going to work, but there are a lot of people in the middle of this country, a lot of independents who don't like this, who see this as demonic. But the problem with the Democrats is they don't see the people in the middle. They didn't in 2016. They don't see us now. They're not going to see it in 2020 because they reject all of those people, and they think that everybody thinks the way they do in New York, D.C., and here in Los Angeles. They think the people that are storming through the streets of Portland or on the streets of L.A., dancing around in tutus with protest signs, that's who they think Americans are.
So well put. Thank you, Tommy. Next, more hate-filled lunacy as the left continues to lose its collective mind over the president's meeting with Kanye. The latest after the break. All right, last night, Saturday Night Live didn't surprise anyone, opening up their show mocking President Trump and Kanye West. Take a look.
If you look at Chicago, some people call it Chirac, but the murder rate is going down 20% every year. And pretty soon it's going to be a negative murder rate. We're going to be digging bodies out of the ground.
All this guy can talk. He doesn't stop. He doesn't listen to anyone but himself. Who does he remind me of?
And I don't want to brag, bro. I don't want to brag, but I really have a high IQ. I'm a stable genius. I got a big brain, and I got the best words.
Oh, my God, he's black me.
So did SNL go too far? Along with our panel, let's bring in co-host of The Five and author of the new book, What the Hell Do You Have to Lose? Trump's War on Civil Rights, our friend Juan Williams. Come on then, Juan, let's have a heated debate. Let's start with the Kanye thing, and then I want to make sure we get get clear about what your book's all about. I think the way that Kanye West has been treated, and you know that I totally detest racism, and we've had good conversations about that in the past. I think the way he's been treated has been racist. He's been singled out for his beliefs precisely because he's black, and that's happened to him from the liberal community.
I don't think so, Steve. I mean, clearly, if he had a specific belief of substance, if there was an argument to be made, and especially for you, a populist argument, because I think there are lots of black people who want the kind of populist response that you advocate, but I don't think that's what he was about. I don't know what his agenda was in there. I thought it was really a troubling session. I mean, using profanity, saying that the red Make America Great Again hat is his Superman's cape, saying that Trump is a father figure. He sounded like a very hurt, troubled child.
Well, that's the stuff. Okay, I'll go two responses to that. First of all, I think there was real substance in there. He talked about family breakdown. He talked about business and entrepreneurship. I thought it was really serious, actually. He talked about crime. But when you use words like troubled and all that, that's the bit that I find kind of patronizing. You're saying, look, he's got to be kind of basically mentally ill. Otherwise, you wouldn't have a black person supporting Trump.
No, I didn't say that. I said he, and by his own, he's been hospitalized. By his own admission, his own lyrics, he talks about bipolar disorder. After he left the White House, he went over to an Apple store here in Washington, got up on a table and started ranting. You can understand why people say, hey, what's with this guy? But I don't think that's the point. I think that would be insulting to people who have mental illness and who are perfectly functional. I think the point is the substance. And you were saying, oh, you thought that he was talking about violence. Look, I think this is part of a distortion. I think Trump really is not talking to the black community, even with Kanye sitting across from him. He's talking to white Americans who say race relations are worse under this president, that they disapprove of how he handles race. Here is Trump saying, I have a black friend. I have Kanye West, and look at him, a black friend in a red hat. Don't worry about people who say I have a problem with race or immigrants.
I think that's really offensive, frankly. And anyway, let's get to it in a second. But I want to make sure, because the panel here dying to get in, but I want to make sure that we broaden it out a bit and just tell us the argument in your book, Juan.
Well, I think the argument is, as you know, the president said, what the hell do you have to lose? And it was reported as he was saying this to black America, as in, to paraphrase him, you live in neighborhoods that are more violent than Afghanistan. You have no jobs. Your schools are terrible. Your streets are filled with trash. And you've been backing Democrats. Come on over to my side. Vote for me, Donald Trump. Again, I think he wasn't speaking to the black community, Steve. I think he was speaking to the white people, overwhelmingly white audience. He never went to a black community to say that. He never spoke on a black program or to a black convention of any kind about it.
Okay.
I think he was saying to that white group in front of him, I, Donald Trump, am no snowflake. I'm not a PC guy. I'm going to point out the problems in the black community and say it's a threat to all of us, and I'm going to stand up there and repel it. I mean, he talks about black people as if they're all poor, the 20% who are in poverty. He doesn't talk about the tremendous striving that has most of black America, the majority, clearly in the middle class.
Yeah, but it's also true. There's an undeniable fact that so much of the disadvantage that has hurt black people and black families has come about as a result of policies that are in the control of state and local government that for decades has been controlled by the Democrats. Anyway, let's just stop there. I want to bring in Teslin and the rest of the panel.
Yeah, well, first of all, I don't think it's fair. I don't like seeing Kanye West's mental illness exploited in that way. He has become clean and said that he's bipolar, but I do think he brought some valid points that we're not able to discuss because he has talked about the mental illness. But what my question to Juan Williams is, Juan, let's go ahead and be honest. Let's go ahead and keep it real in the field for the people who are watching. Even if Kanye West was not mentally ill, the simple fact that he has went against what the black agenda or what the quote-unquote black delegation has told us what we can and cannot say, anytime that you have an opinion that is different from what the Democrat or what the Democrat establishment tells you to do, you are automatically ostracized. Juan Williams, you lost your contract based on what he said about Muslims. I've lost my contract based on what I've said about immigration on Fox News. Juan gets dragged on Fox all day, every day, and he's even told he's a sellout. I've been told I'm a sellout. We are not mentally ill. We are not bipolar. So let's ask Juan. Are you mentally ill? Is that the reason why people drag you all over Twitter because you're black? The bottom line is when you're black and you have a different opinion other than what they tell you to say, we get ostracized for it. So let's be honest and tell the people the truth that this is about a black man that does not agree with other black people tell him to do. And I don't agree no more with Kanye than I did Jay-Z when he was standing and bootlicking Obama's boots. Same boots were being licked, just a different president.
Well, I'm glad you're so honest.
Hold it, Juan. Wait. No. I want Tommy, come on.
Well, you pretty much summed it up. I mean, how can I compete with that? I mean, your passion is obvious here. And, you and I were talking about this before. I think the fact that he's there, the fact that he's inspiring other black Americans to come out and support who they want to support the president, be independent thinkers, I think that's great. However, I think that Kanye got what he wanted, and that's that the United States and the world are talking about Kanye West. I don't know why we're still talking about Kanye West, to be quite honest with you. I wish we were talking about building a wall. I wish we would be talking about tax reform and tax breaks for everyday Americans across the United States. I wish we were talking less about this and more about the issues that impact real people.
Well, I'll say that there are a lot of Americans who do not fit in a neat conservative or liberal box. There are a lot of folks who have idiosyncratic opinions, and my feeling is that those people tend to get locked out of our political conversations. My book, Melting Pot or Civil War...
Here it is. I want to hold it up because it's a really great book, by the way, and everyone who cares about immigration, you've got to get this book. I really mean it. It's seriously good.
Well, thank you so much, Steve, but a big part of the concern is this idea of annihilationism, this idea that we don't want to exist alongside people of different political opinions. And the truth is that we're always going to have that diversity in our country. It's a good thing. It can be a source of strength, but we need to accept that diversity of opinion and not stigmatize it, not demonize people who don't fit in one box or another.
All right. Well, we haven't got much time, but we've got to get Juan back on the bootlicking and other issues. Come on.
Well, I mean, I was really appreciative of that comment because it strikes me as such hypocrisy when you hear conservatives absolutely throwing their arms around Kanye, the Kanye West, the guy who said George W. Bush doesn't care about black people, but also that when Common, Jay-Z, and other rappers came to the White House with Obama, it was like, oh, these guys are thugs. These guys talk about gangsters. They use the N-word in their lyrics. And I thought, boy, this is crazy. Now they put their arms around Kanye. Obviously, this is political expedience. It's not about substance. And that's the key. I'm someone who does get beat up because I have my own opinions. They're what I think. I'll tell you. I don't try to obey any orthodoxy. But when it came to Kanye, I don't know exactly what the agenda or substance was other than promoting Kanye and talking about his ego and his desire to have Trump as a father.
I think that it felt to me like there was serious substance there put in a way
Name
that you don't know. Wait, on Family Break. No, wait.
No,
on
Steve,
Family
come on.
Breakdown,
He wasn't
how that's
there
hurt
talking
Black
about Family Breakdown.
Hang on. Yeah, he absolutely was. His own family, not to mention everyone else's, how much that has hurt him. That was deeply emotional. That's what we should be talking about in politics, on welfare, on business, on entrepreneurship, on crime. These are serious issues. And for you
if
to just
he was
dismiss
there
it, I think
doing
it's
what
ridiculous.
Steve Hilton
All right,
just said, I would have said that's great. He did not do that, Steve.
Oh my God! He absolutely was one. I don't
Steve,
know
he didn't
what you
even
were watching.
come
Maybe
close. The
SNL
closest
thing.
he came
You
was
were watching
talking
the
about some
parody.
guy that's in jail.
No, that you were watching the parody. All right. Anyway, nice to see you. Well, thanks a lot. See you soon.
Thank you, guys.
Coming up, why Taylor Swift? Sorry, why Taylor Swift? Oh my gosh, Taylor Swift, Kanye Taylor Swift. Why she should have known Phil Bredesen from Tennessee was trouble when he walked into the Senate race. That's next. The top investigator reportedly admitted to being, quote, keenly aware that documentation would have been later requested as public records. Bredesen denied covering up harassment in his office, arguing it was all part of an effort to protect the identities of victims. Because Democrats really care about that, of course. Just ask Dianne Feinstein. Then, Governor Bredesen told reporters at the time, there's nothing to be covered up here, but admitted, I don't have any way of proving that to you. You can say that again, and in fact, he kind of had to, because the same thing happened again. Just 2 months later, Bredesen's Department of Corrections Commissioner, Quentin White, resigned amid sexual harassment accusations. Governor Bredesen confirmed a sexual assault allegation from 2004, but said investigators found no corroboration of the claim. Guess what happened to those investigation notes? They were shredded too. Can you imagine what Democrats would have said if this had happened with Brett Kavanaugh? Oh, we did an investigation into Christine Blasey Ford's allegations, but we can't tell you about it because someone shredded the notes. I think Democrats would be shredding whoever said that. And surely they'd be shredding whoever said this. At the time of the Tennessee state government sexual harassment scandals, a senior official acknowledged the problem, but then said, quote, any time you mix men and women together in a work environment, there's going to be issues. Great. And guess who said that? None other than Taylor Swift's new political heartthrob, Democratic Senate candidate Phil Bredesen. I've got no problem with Taylor Swift getting political, but if she's going to pose as a champion for women and a supporter of the Me Too movement, it might be an idea for her not to endorse men whose motto for official sexual harassment claims amounts to shake it off. While we're on the subject of hypocrisy, check out this man, the Democratic senator running for re-election in Indiana, Joe Donnelly. He's repeatedly criticized his Republican opponent, Mike Braun, over business dealings with China. Take a look at one of Donnelly's campaign ads on the topic.
This is Mike Braun's global network of foreign auto parts suppliers. He uses foreign workers in Mexico, Taiwan, all across China. In a debate, Braun tried to hide it.
I don't know where they get them made. We distribute them.
Come on, Mike, this is your company website. Click here. It's even in Chinese. You list more than 200 foreign suppliers.
Come on, Mike. How about come on, Joe? You'd think, wouldn't you, that a candidate attacking his opponent for importing products from China would not, in fact, himself be importing products from China. I mean, no one could be that stupid and hypocritical, could they? Oh dear. Turns out that Senator Joe Donnelly has owned significant stakes in a family business run by his brother called Stewart Superior Corp., a company that has, received repeated shipments of goods from China. Between 2011 and 2017, Stewart Superior received more than 120,000 pounds of Chinese materials, spread out across more than 20 shipments. Senate financial records show that Donnelly collected dividend payments from the company worth somewhere between $15,000 and $50,000 just in 2016. So, swampy Senator Joe Donnelly criticizes his opponent for making money from Chinese imports and then does exactly the same thing himself. With hypocrisy like that, the next thing you know, he'll be endorsed by Taylor Swift. Tell us what you think on social media at NextRevFNC and at Steve Hilton X. Coming up this morning, Hillary Clinton outdid herself in her hypocrisy over Bill Clinton's affair with Monica Lewinsky. We'll tell you what she said next.
Do you think Bill should have resigned in the wake of the Monica Lewinsky scandal?
Absolutely not.
It wasn't an abuse of power?
No.
There are people who look at the incidents of the 90s and they say a president of the United States cannot have a consensual relationship with an intern. The power imbalance is too great.
Who was an adult. But let me ask you this. Where's the investigation of the current incumbent against whom numerous allegations have been made?
Okay, fine. Hillary Clinton denies that perhaps her husband's most flagrant abuse of power was an abuse of power at all. And then when she's pressed on it, she attacks President Trump. I mean, come on.
Oh, shocker, we could have guessed that. But this is how the Clintons operate. There's always a set of rules for them and then a set of rules for everyone else. And of course, she so soon forgets that when she was First Lady, she had a little bimbo eruption squad that was in charge of making sure all of Bill's accusers were silenced and blackmailed. But she readily forgets that. And the whole reason, you talked about this during the break, the whole reason why she's doing this, why she's coming out with these interviews, is because they're trying to sell their speaking tour. No one wants to see them. They're boring. It's like watching paint dry. So she's got to go out there and say ridiculous things so people care about her again. It's, again, a money-making scheme for the Clintons.
It's because they don't have enough money. But, I mean, what is going on that which is the midterm elections 2 years on from 2016 and there's just endless Hillary Clinton everywhere?
Yeah, what's going on is a clear path to lose. You know, it's really unfortunate. I was talking to a candidate in Oklahoma City and said nobody's talking about his race. Nobody's talking about the assessor race. Nobody's talking about the state races. Nobody's talking about the congressional races because of this type of distraction. And Democrats are once again self-destructing by continuing to talk about who slept with who with Bill Clinton, continue to talk about Kanye and what Kanye said as a rapper, even though his latest song clearly degrades women all over. It's called I Love It. Yeah, that talks about women completely up and down, cousins, mothers, sleep with everybody. Nobody said anything about that. Okay. Yeah, you need to go look it up, Steve. Yeah, because if they're so concerned. Yeah, because if they're so concerned about, you know, planting these bad seeds and what Kanye's thoughts is, let's talk about that. Nobody wants to have the real conversation. And so when Republicans win, once again in the midterms, don't be surprised. This is why Democrats lost the House, and will continue to lose if they continue this strategy.
All right.
Savvy, forward-looking Democrats want to turn the page on the Clinton era. You saw that after Al Franken. There were people saying that, you know what, Clinton should have resigned, but then they keep inserting themselves constantly, and what it does is it dredges up those memories of 2016. They just feel the need to take ownership of everything. So all of these, you know, young progressive candidates in Florida and elsewhere who might have some momentum, they can't get the oxygen that they need to make their case. So I think the Clintons are doing their party a huge disservice.
All right, well, thanks, gang. That was great. Great discussion. Appreciate you being with us. Coming up, the hypocrisy of Jeff Bezos and all of Silicon Valley on Saudi Arabia. The details next. So, the Washington Post is outraged over the apparent murder by the Saudi Arabian government of its columnist Jamal Khashoggi, even running full-page ads inside the paper, demanding answers and action. Well, here's an idea. Why doesn't the Washington Post demand answers and action from its billionaire owner, Jeff Bezos, pictured here, sucking up to Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, who's said to be behind the execution? Bezos is just one of a small army of tech titans falling over themselves to do business with the Saudis and hoover up their cash. So, to all those self-righteous tech geeks and save the world hipsters in Silicon Valley and beyond, tweeting away in your WeWork rabbit hutches, maybe you should take a break from the outrage about what the Trump administration is or is not doing about the Khashoggi case and reflect on the fact that your office is in fact funded by this revolting regime. That's all for tonight. My thanks to Tommy, to Rayhan, Teslin, Jason Chaffetz and Juan Williams. Remember to buy Rayhan's brilliant book, Here It Is, Melting Pot or Civil War. You can learn more about the Next Revolution by following us at NextRevFNC. Mark